gotta get a better chair, man. This old school wooden chair with a mismatching cushion just ain't cutting it. Anyway. Hey, how y'all doing? Just thought I'd make a quick little video again. Share some interesting thoughts. You know, something that comes up in therapy a lot is talking about feelings. Who'd have thought? Feelings come up a lot. And we talk about feelings where, you know, there's so much talk about when it comes to feelings. But a lot of times we talk about how they're hard to control. And it feels like sometimes they just come at you, and sometimes people talk about them feeling very mixed, right? Like, Ozzy, is it possible to feel this and this together? Or how come I feel this and then like later on I feel like this? All these kind of questions we explore in therapy. And it's something very relatable for a lot of people. So we talk about things, and one of the things that I think are helpful to bring up when I'm trying to get to my point, in grad school, or was it undergrad? I can't remember. In my psych program, I believe it was undergrad, my later years of it, we were talking about feelings. And one of the cool concepts that came up was this idea of primary and secondary feelings. And so there's a cool little picture that I remember being drawn up on the whiteboard, or on the chalkboard back then. And it was kind of interesting because it was something like this, right? So we talked about having there's many theories that talk about emotions and how many emotions do we have and blah, blah. And I apologize because I can't think of whose theory this was. The feeling theory that this is about is this idea of primary and secondary. So you have one side, you experience things like grief. Did I spell that right? I before E except after C? How does it look like? No, dude, I totally messed that up. I'm tired, y'all. I'm sorry, I'm tired. Anyway, you have grief and fear. So shabby arrow. You have joy and relief. Why are you gonna play with this I before E stuff? From here, these are the primary feelings. Right? In this theory, they talked about this being the primary emotions that we experience, and other emotions stem from these. So then if you imagine, you know, maybe this, and then this stems even further into other things, right? And I kind of like this theory to some level. You know, there's like levels or layers to some feelings, and this kind of helps with people that talk about, you know, these mixed feelings, or sometimes this feeling changes into this and so forth. So I kind of bring this theory up. And what's really helpful about this theory is when we talk about anger. Anger's rough, right? Anger is one of those emotions that are intense. It can hit you hard. It can take over your whole body sometimes, and it can absolutely just take over your whole mind. Anger can take over. And people can do some rough things when they're angry. So a lot of times in therapy, we talk about, you know, how does anger relate to my other emotions? So I talk about this stuff right here, where I say anger tends to stem, according to this theory, tends to stem from grief and fear. It can stem from both. And you have to look inside yourself to figure out where that's coming from, particularly, to decide where it is. It could be different for everybody. But let me explain how there's a connection to those. And I think that's the point that I make when I bring this up with clients. It tends to be pretty useful for most when they talk, when they give me feedback. So you think about grief, right? So grief would be the primary emotion, and like anger pops up as a secondary thing. It kind of come from it. So people ask, okay, how does anger, you know, if I'm pissed off, how come deep down I'm sad, right? How is it that I'm deep down in grief? Think about that. When we're kids, you can see it easily. When a kid loses something, they may throw a tantrum. They may express some choice words. They may protest in some way. And we sit there and express anger because we are sad, or grief because we've lost something. In a scenario with parenting, it could be that you have lost your Xbox. You cannot use the car this weekend. And that person may, at the core of it, if the dust settles, they can express a core feeling of, yeah, I felt a sense of this thing was taken from me. So we get angry, right? Maybe after a breakup in a relationship, you get this feeling of loss, you grieve a relationship, a breakup, and you may experience some level of anger, right? Some sense of anger. So sometimes we talk with clients and we discuss how that makes a connection for them, and so we process deep down what's really that feeling, what's that about, where's that coming from, and it makes clear sense to them usually by the end of the conversation or by the end of a couple of conversations why that anger comes up. And then we talk about anger. It has its place. I'm by no measure in this little video am I saying that anger is bad and it can't be expressed. No, it's a feeling. And as I've mentioned from other videos, you have every right to feel everything you feel. We're humans. Emotions are supposed to be experienced. So, anger comes up, and anger's tough, man. Like in the video game world, you get various power-ups and different game dynamics. Sometimes you get a power-up temporarily. And I sometimes view anger like that sometimes. I talk to clients, depending who it is, on how, like, look at it like this, right? Sometimes the way that they're expressing it to me, it comes up, so then I say this, where it's like a power-up, right? You get that mushroom, or you get that extra, you know, floaty thingy, and now for like 30 seconds, you're double strength, or you're super fast, or whatever. But the problem is, some of these game dynamics have it where when you get the power-up, that's excellent, you know? There's a game I used to play called StarCraft, and it was like a strategy-based war game. And you can make your infantry soldiers have an upgrade of a stimulus, a stim pack. And it would like double their attack power and their ammunition, stuff like that. But it would kill their life in half. So you have temporary, you know, Arnold Schwarzeneggers out there, but then they're gone in a matter of seconds. Right? So that was like a give and take balance idea. And I often bring this up to clients. Right? You got to be careful how you use your anger. Sure, you felt that anger, but look at the words you use, and now that relationship's kind of tarnished, right? Or yeah, it's great, you expressed that thing, you told that boss right off, but now you got no job, right? Sometimes we got to be mindful about how you use that energy. How do you use that anger, right? So with clients, and we talk about grief and anger, we talk about how you want to recognize this connection because it kind of tempers that anger. It tempers it to a much more manageable and suited experience. Sorry, I have a client coming up, where you get a chance to be more conscious and intentional with what you're about to do with that emotion, right? It makes sense how we can get angry after being sad. So we try to make that connection in therapy and try to help a client be more conscientious of it in their outside of the office time, right? And that's anger and grief. I got like less than 5 minutes here. With fear, I think of the fight or flight response. I think of survival. I think of evolutionary psychology stuff. But with fear, anger comes out, like I say, out of that fight or flight response usually, right? When we're scared or anxious about something, we don't know what's going to happen, right? And how often when we were scared or fearful of something or worried, do we try to put on a better sense of control, a better sense of feeling like I have the courage or I have the strength to do something about what's going on? And so sometimes people choose anger. Sometimes anger comes up as a secondary feeling, as a response to the core feeling of fear, right? Fear, anxiety, just being scared. And you sit there and don't know what to do with that emotion, fear, anxiety, the unknown. But you know how to be pissed off. You know how to get mad. You know how to say some stuff. So we get mad. You know, we don't feel weak. We don't feel lost. We don't feel out of control. We feel powerful. We feel strong. We feel like important or something when we have anger that's covering fear. And that might help us do something. Again, I'm not saying that's bad all the time, right? Sometimes we use that. We use that anger so I can make a better decision, or I would use that anger so I can have some direction, because I can't do anything when I'm scared. Totally understand it. But it's helpful to make the connection and process and see if a client connects with that. Where's that coming from again? You know, and how do we act then more in the moment, in a more conscientious way? How do we act now that we made that connection? So I talk about these dynamics of feelings, primary, secondary, and how it relates to the client. And I'm hoping that maybe this helps you guys kind of think about your feelings a little more. Sometimes that anger, is it coming from somewhere a little more primary, a little more authentic? Not that that anger isn't warranted, but maybe we're wasting energy and resource just focusing on that or leaving it at that, right? Maybe there's something beneficial about taking a look and asking oneself, yeah, I'm pissed, I'm angry, but where's this coming from? Am I kind of scared about what's happening right now? Am I a little sad? Am I a mix of both? And then put attention to that other primary feeling. All right, why am I sad? Why am I scared? Right? Because we'll sit there and be angry about something and be like, well, that's why I'm angry. I'm angry because of this. I'm angry because of that. But we don't maybe look at, well, I'm sad because of this. And, there's something helpful about processing why we're pissed about something. We kind of calm down at the end of it, perhaps, or we have a clearer idea of how to channel that energy. So it's not to say that we can't feel something similar when you experience the processing of that sadness or processing of that grief or that fear, that anxiety, that unknown, right? So try to connect with that if you can. Whether you're talking by yourself, writing things out, talking to a friend, reflecting, talking to your own professional. But please, think about it. I hope this is helpful. Y'all take care, be safe, all that good stuff. Talk to you next time. Bye.